We all want to feel peace in our lives. Peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. Hey everyone, welcome back to Paring Down. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun editing this conversation this week because we recorded it before I moved to Alaska. As many of you guys know, I got way ahead on these interview episodes because I knew that I wasn't going to have the bandwidth before my kids would go back to school while we were settling into Alaska. So anyway, this was recorded back this spring with Chelsi Jo from Systemize Your Life. So as I was listening to it during the editing process, I was like, oh, this is so good. Like, she has so many good ideas. And I love the way that she is so frank and honest about what we need to do in our lives in order to feel fulfilled, but without making us feel judged. You know, like, she's just top notch. She gives really practical advice in the second half of the episode. And the first half of the episode, she's going to make you realize that you want to do more important things with your life than just like float along and not have any systems in place that get you where you want to go. It's so motivating. It's so practical. I'm really stoked for you to hear it because I was stoked to listen back to it. So let me tell you a little bit more about Chelsi Jo before you listen to our conversation. She is a wife, a mom, CEO, and top-ranked podcaster. She shares in this episode that her podcast, Systemize Your Life, just recently hit 3 million downloads in the 6 or 7 years that she's had it. So that's incredible. And she's a system-obsessed professional who specializes in teaching other work-from-home moms the strategic systems they need to manage their homes in as little time as possible, plus create major impacts and income in the hours they set aside to work. Even if you are not a work-from-home mom, anyone who has to manage a lot and juggle a lot in their lives is going to get so much from this episode. So please enjoy this conversation with the beautiful, the funny, the brilliant Chelsi Jo. Chelsi Jo, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Well, I just gave everyone a little intro about who you are, what you do, but I like to give guests the opportunity to introduce themselves too. So would you kind of tell the people who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, well, I am a mom and a wife and a business owner. And I really came to this place of running ChelsiJo.co, which is the name of my company, quite a while ago. I think it's been about 7 years. When I was previously a professional sign language interpreter, and I was running an event-based wedding styling business. And then I was also a single mom. I got married. I had a kiddo, and like my world was imploding. There's just a lot going on. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but essentially I pivoted out of that, out of necessity, and wound up here. And so now on a regular basis, I am really pouring into my home and my marriage and my church community, and my family. My extended family is a really big part of my life. And then I'm running this company that I have now with a podcast and the YouTube channel, with about like 20 to 25 hours a week. I've got a team of people that definitely help me run this thing. So yeah, that's me. We do have a dog. That's a new thing. He's like 1.5 years.
Ooh, what kind of dog?
You know, he's one of those like half human, half doodle breeds where he thinks he's like an actual member of the family.
I've got one of those as well.
It was like funny when people would make jokes about it until I was like, it's all accurate. It's all accurate.
No, it's so true. I, in fact, have mine right there, right in front of me, just my dedicated podcast audience, studio audience, just staring at me.
I love it.
Okay, this is amazing. You have done so much. I'm so intrigued by the sign language interpreting. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know you had a wedding, event planning business. I mean, you really have had quite the swath, the wide array of background. How
Yeah.
did you decide to talk about systemizing your life with your podcast and your brand?
Well, when I was in that place in my life where I had a 3 year old, I had just gotten married to a firefighter. And so his rotation was you work 2 days and then you're home for 4 days, which is only 6 days out of the week. So you can see that we were never just working Monday, Tuesday, and then have the rest of the week off. So it was a constant revolving schedule. And so there was a lot that was not working. And I was trying to cook Pinterest meals and keep up with laundry. And now my husband's trying to figure out budgeting for a family of 4 when he was single. By the time I got through my Pinterest scroll and putting together these bougie meals that were going to impress my family and my husband, my time to actually go to the grocery store and get the food put away was like done. And so I use that story all the time because I literally vividly remember that day sitting on that couch. Like I could see it in my head where I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this way anymore. So I started creating systems. And in that process, things really started changing for me and what it looked like to be fully embodying my gifts and my talents as a wife and as a mom. And I started teaching them to my friends that were struggling. And then I was like, I should start a blog. I've always wanted to do that. So I started a blog and quickly realized that that was the most time consuming thing I could have chosen to do with my life. And so I started a podcast. And it took off like wildfire. And so here I am. The podcast is just about 6 years old, and we just hit an incredible 3 million downloads on the show. And
Oh, congrats. Holy moly.
It's been so amazing. Thanks. And all of that just to say that systems are super cool, and I think people need them. And so Systemize Your Life is it is my life. And so the podcast is just an extension of who I am and how I live. And I want to be really helpful to other people. And the podcast is a really great place for me to be able to do that.
Incredible. I mean, I think that organic feedback of so many people wanting to listen is proof not only of what a need there is for so many of us to systemize, but also a reflection of you and you doing your work in such an organic and authentic way. You feel like you're one of us, but you just like happen to be maybe a couple steps ahead and put the thought into it and are able to offer your expertise, which I love to hear. And before we dive into some of those more specific pieces of expertise that you do have, would you share, because you shared how your life looked before these systems were in place.
Yeah.
How did implementing the systems like truly change that chaotic life you were living?
The number one thing that happened is I got a ton of time back, and I was able to be really clear with what I wanted to do with that time, because truth be told, the mission behind everything that I do, the other part of the story that I haven't shared yet, is that I watched my mom sacrifice herself for her family and for her children her entire life. And I knew she was missing a piece of her. And it broke my heart as a child. So much so that I, all my life, swore I would never be a mother. I swore I would never have kids. And so I broke up with my high school sweetheart after we graduated and we're supposed to get married and have kids, because I was like, I need a career. I want to go soar. I want to be all these things that mothers cannot be, which is not true, but I didn't know. And then I became a mom, and I didn't have a choice but to work while I was a mom because I was the only one providing for her. And I think I just really wanted, when I became a mom, I was in the place where I had to work. So I had to figure out how to take care of myself in the same day, in the same time. I refused to just roll over and submit to this idea that I have to be busy and I have to be unkept and I have to be unwell and I have to be unhealthy because I'm a mom and I have a job. I looked around and I was like, Oprah's Oprah. The president's the president. They all have 24 hours. Like, granted, I know that I don't have personal assistants, but why can't I someday? Why can't my kids be my personal assistant? Like, what are we doing? And so I started to just look at my time very differently. And I was like, look, none of this gets better unless I stop recreating the wheel every single time I sit down to do the same thing I did last week. And that's essentially what it comes down to, and what all of my systems are hinged upon is there are so many things that you do and repeat. It's actually like 95% of what you do every week is identical to what you did last week. And 100% of what we do is pretty predictable, except for the things that truly are outside of our control. But even our kids getting sick, may it be outside of our control, it's predictable. We know it's coming at some point, so we should probably get prepared, right?
Mm-hmm. Happened to me today. My son's in the other room, home from school. Funny you mention it.
Because it's so real. So, I quickly stopped spending time on Pinterest. I very quickly was able to say, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? There's 15 meals at the back of my hand that everybody loves. Why not just repeat those? Like, what are we doing? Why are we recreating? And then that ended up being the same in my business too, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But I just got everything really dialed in at home to where I didn't even have to think about the things that I've already been thinking about every week for years on end. Why are we still making these decisions every week? Just set it, automate it, and free up all of that time and bandwidth.
Yes. I love me a good plug and chug. Like, that's just my life. Like, even I had someone say like a year ago when I started my newsletter, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're starting a newsletter too. And I was like, let me tell you what I'm doing, my friend. It is just an acronym, LESS. It's the Less Express. All I have to do is plug and chug. L is what's on the podcast this week. E is like a quote about minimalism. S is just a short note from me to the people. And then the other S is simplify, like a little decluttering challenge. So every week I'm not sitting down with a blank slate in front of me trying to figure out what to write in a newsletter. It's just plug and chug, and you just, tweak things a little bit. And so, I think that's brilliant. That's exactly how you approached all of life. And it's interesting to hear you talking about being a working mom, because I've been all of the different types of quote moms, right? Like, I've been a stay-at-home mom, I've been a working mom, and I've been like a hybrid mom, which is what I consider myself now, where I'm working part-time from home for myself, but I'm still working, 30 hours a week, sometimes 40. So it's not so part-time to keep up with paring down. And I firmly believe, like you do, that we can still be okay, like be ourselves and be good parents and be good at our career. And it's not a matter of this unrealistic, women can do it all, and therefore it stresses us out even more because we're expected to do it all. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that there is so much, like you say, that we can systemize in order to make the most of our time in a way that we feel really good about. And the way that the rest of the world makes that sound or calls it is work-life balance. So whether it's your job versus your family or momming versus self-care, there's this whole like balance, you got to find balance. So my question for you is, do you think true balance is possible? Or do you think that in trying to balance it all perfectly, it's yet another hamster wheel?
It's funny. I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I have a couple answers. And I was like, well, I don't know which one's going to come out when she asks me. But here's the truth. This question has been asked of me a lot. And I also have a lot of feelings about self-care. Because when you use the word balance, it automatically makes people think about what has been marketed to us through social media, through podcasts, through a lot of different things. I actually, in one of my programs, claim this whole balance idea, right? Like, one of my programs is really hinged upon the idea of balancing your home and your business, because that's essentially what I do every day is balance home and business. That is what I'm doing every single day. But I don't think it needs to be as active as what people say. And I don't think that there is a way, because I have a lot of people, especially my peers in business, that are far more advanced and lucrative in their companies than I am, that are like, oh no, it's not possible. And I'm like, well, no, not if you want to hustle and you want to go as fast as you possibly can in business, then something's going to get left behind. And I actually have a very deep obsession with high achievers. I watch documentaries on professional sports players and military professionals, just anyone that's high achieving constantly. And what I'm doing is I'm observing, what do they do to get there? And I look at this with business professionals too. And there are women that are like this, that are very high achieving, but I don't think that their life is balanced in the way that I want mine to look. And so, have I been able to grow a very successful company? Yes, I have. It's taken me 6 years and we're still growing, but I've been present for every single thing that I wanted to be present for in my home at the same time. So I often say that slow is the pace that greatness grows, because I do believe that greatness in my eyes looks very different than the greatness that Tom Brady is, right? And I don't want that kind of greatness.
Did you see the Jason Kelsey comeback about Tom Brady? When Tom
No.
Brady was like, said, oh, Travis Kelsey would have won the Super Bowl if he had spent less time with Taylor Swift. And then Jason, his brother, said, yeah, you would still have a wife if you had spent less time playing football. But like, there's like some truth. I thought that comeback was so funny. But like, there's some truth to that where like you said, we can't necessarily get to the top the fastest. Like, if
Mhm.
that is our sole focus, we will leave things behind. But like you said,
Yeah.
you're leaving that room, that wiggle room, to discern your own definition of success.
It's an interesting sacrifice that you have to choose to make in order to have the best of both worlds. And so for me, that's what I think is absolutely possible. And that's why I want to talk about balance as much as I humanly can, because I want women to understand that it's not all or nothing, that you really can jump into business and be successful at it, or work outside of the home and still show up really, really well as a mom and be super successful at that at the same time. You literally can do that. Does it take work? Yeah, it does. But my heart is so satisfied. There's like a deep and meaningful peace and joy in the work that I get to do at home and in my office and in my business. And it's the same for my marriage. It's very easy for people to pour into their kids and pour into their work, and then their marriage takes a hit. So that's one of the systems that I actually created. It's called the fundamental needs system, and it ensures that I am touching on my fundamental needs every single week without fail. And that system came from that time in my life where I also stopped doing Pinterest meals. I was trying to figure out why me and my newlywed husband, some weeks were really great and some weeks weren't. And so I would come into the bedroom on Sunday and I would sit down with a whiteboard and I would say, why did you have the best week ever? Like, you were so happy and encouraging and supportive and you showed up hard at home, and like, what happened? Well, essentially it was like, well, I got to go to the gym 5 times, and like these things were coming out of him that were foundational and fundamental to his like real deep seated contentment, but more so like it's joy, right? It's feeling like your cup has been filled, like you've been filled up so you can pour out more. And then there were weeks where it was like, that was terrible. What broke down? What happened? What did we not do? And essentially we came up with 8 fundamental needs that we repeat and have been repeating for the last like 9 years. We still do them. We reassess them every quarter. Now we kind of reassess them on an as need basis because they've just been the same for so long. And that's one of the things that I like to teach on a lot, is these things are really easy to capture and repeat in your life, and they will keep the foundational fundamental things alive, like meal planning and your finances and planning out your week and having a date night, family fun with your kids and your spouse together without phones and Apple Watches involved, and, getting to the gym and having an actual work block. For me, that was fundamental in the beginning, as I knew I had this goal, but it was like grasping at straws to get a work block. And so I was like, it is foundational that I prioritize this. Cleaning the house and doing to-dos, these things have to be done. And in the pursuit of growth, we will leave fundamental things on the back burner. We will put them off and put them off and put them off. And I wanted to prioritize them as I grew a company and as I raised my children.
That's so cool. Is that something that people can just find on your website?
Yeah, we actually have a free workbook for you to learn my fundamental needs system. It's just chelsijo.co/fundamental needs workbook. I'll make sure that you guys have the link for that. And it'll take you through the whole system and help you find what your fundamental needs are. And then you can start using them.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah, I'll make sure that's in the show notes for sure. This conversation's reminding me of the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Have you read it?
I have not.
Okay, if you love high achievers, you will
Yeah,
love this because the whole
I
book is
do.
him trying to get to the bottom of what makes certain people outliers, like incredibly high achievers. So from
That's
Bill
cool.
Gates to like the number one free thrower in the WNBA to the Beatles, like big names that are true outliers in their industries and what has kind of caused them to get there. And his conclusion is super fascinating. I won't get into it or give it all away, but something that he does talk about and that has become very popularized, which I'm sure you've heard, is within that book, he talks about the 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. So we all know nowadays, like what makes someone an expert? It is
Yeah.
10,000 hours of experience. And that comes from Malcolm Gladwell's research. And it's one of those things where, like, if you take Serena Williams, right, and obviously Venus as well, yes, they're talented. Yes, they had great coaching and, of course, a supportive father, to the point of supportive is an understatement of the century.
Right.
But
Right.
the biggest thing that all these people have in common is they had access to do the thing that was important to them a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot, and more access than anyone else had, more time spent on it than anyone else. And so that speaks to what you're saying, is that it's not necessarily a shining star of balance in their lives in order
Yeah.
to become those wildly successful outliers. And while I'm sure it's very cool to be a wildly successful outlier, when you are also a mom and you have a husband and you have the family and you're, you know, not a 5-year-old Serena and Venus Williams through their teenage years where you have nothing else to focus on other than tennis,
Yeah,
then like you're not going to necessarily be one of those outliers.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing from you is like, that's okay. Like you don't have to be this extreme outlier in order to find success, in order to have a successful company like you do and meet those fundamental needs. And on the same note is the idea of productivity, because that is a lot of what you talk about, is how to be more productive. But there is a little bit of a war on productivity right now, kind of an anti-productivity movement where it's like, have grace on yourself, don't run yourself into the ground, you know? When in reality, I would imagine you agree with me here, productivity is actually really important to our well-being. So how can we ensure that productivity doesn't become unhealthy? And what are your general thoughts just about this anti-productivity movement?
Well, I genuinely believe as humans, we were put here to produce and not to consume. And so my main goal is to be productive with the time that I was given because I don't know how much time I have. And I want to be as fruitful as I possibly can be. I think that we are living in a culture now where everything is easy to be consumed. It's very, very, very easy for us to feel satisfied. And when we don't, we feel like, well, we better feel good. We better feel satisfied. We better always be chasing these things that are for us. And meanwhile, on the back end, we're super counterproductive with what we're actually producing all day long. And so for me, I just think that it is lighting the candle at both ends to consume all day long and then be really upset that people and your own guilt says, oh, well, I don't need to force myself to be productive. I can just whatever insert word that you have. Because truth be told, you're spending the same amount of energy every single day. Every single day. And this is like the thing that I say all the time. You have a choice. You can either work really hard and it amounts to nothing. So when you go to bed at the end of the day, you have no idea what you accomplished. You are feeling very low, and then you're searching further, right? You can do that hamster wheel, or you can spend the exact same amount of energy and produce what you intended to produce. Sleep well, have peace, have joy, lay down at the end of the day and be like, smashed it, you know? Like
Yes.
that is what we should be doing with our time. I do genuinely believe that in order to produce at the level that we are supposed to produce, we should be resting a lot. So I'm not saying that we should be hustling, because that's not productive, right? I think it's just that our focus needs to be spent on, what am I actually doing with my time every day? And what do I want to be doing with my time every day? I think a lot of people look at what needs to get done. Well, true, but there's a there's a beacon and an anchor inside of us that we can really cling to. I think that will allow us to know, like, we want to make more eye contact with our kids. We want to show up and produce well in our companies. Like, we genuinely desire these things. That is what we want. And so what we need to do is not this running checklist. We need to align ourselves with those things that we really want to be doing and make sure that our actions are following through with that. So making time and building in time for those things, like making eye contact and having uninterrupted time to work and making sure that we're cooking the way that we want, or whatever it is that we're trying to produce in a day, means that we might have to get our house organized. We might have to simplify a little bit. We might have to say no to the second, third, or fourth extracurricular activity that we signed our children up for. Like, we might have to do that. And I think a lot of people have a hard time making those decisions. And so then they get behind these mantras and these movements that justify their lack of action in the direction that they really want to go in.
Yeah. I see that all the time, and it's easy to start falling in step with that. I know that it's a very intentional choice to say, I'm going to focus on and actually do the things that I know will make me happy. Like, yes, watching a little bit more of that show would be fun, but I will feel so much better going to bed if I finish this book that is really important to me, or, whatever it might be. Hey guys, it's time for your ad break. Each week I like to say a huge thank you for your graciousness that these are part of the podcast. Here we go. You guys know the reason I love living in Alaska is because of how much we can get outside. But did you know that Americans spend an average of 90% of their time indoors? That's wild. And did you know that indoor air can be up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air? The air gets stale. We have chemicals from when we're cooking. There might be contaminants like allergens, viruses, smoke, gases, mold spores, all of that. And my husband's sneezing fits have completely stopped. I'm not even kidding. I'm not making this up just to try and sell you something, but they have actually stopped since we started using our Air Doctor. This is an award-winning air purifier that eliminates 99.99% of all those dangerous contaminants I just named. I know a lot of my friends are looking into getting air purifiers, and it's always hard to make a choice as to which one. So I want you to know that Air Doctor was voted best air purifier by Newsweek. So it's really no surprise that 98% of Air Doctor customers agree that their home's air feels cleaner, safer, and healthier. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code PAIRING, PARING. Remember, there's no I in pair, to get up to $300 off today. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, plus a 3-year warranty, an $84 value, free. So get this exclusive podcast-only offer now at airdoctorpro.com, airdoctorpro.com, and use promo code PAIRING, PARING. Everything you're saying reminds me, and I kind of looked this up ahead of time because I was like, oh, this is the idea of competence within psychology. So the APA definition of competence is the ability to exert control over one's life, to cope with specific problems effectively, and to make changes to one's behavior and one's environment, as opposed to the mere ability to just adjust or adapt to circumstances, like being reactive, essentially. And affirming, strengthening, or achieving a client's competence is often a basic goal in psychotherapy. And the concept of competence was introduced by psychologist Robert White in 1959 into the scientific discussion of motivational psychology. And he described that the need for competence is an innate drive. Like you were saying, this is innately within us, and our psychological well-being is tied up in whether or not we are actually completing tasks and like showing ourselves a level of competence in terms of solving problems effectively, all of that. I
Yeah.
mean, and don't we feel it, right? Like for me, I think about social media. If I'm just consuming on social media, I am miserable. Like, I mean, sometimes I laugh really hard if I get on the right algorithm. I'm like, I'm on a roll. All these videos are
It's
hilarious.
my
My poor husband is under
favorite.
a pile of texts from me, like his TikTok homework, you know?
You sent him all the things.
Yes. I'm like, this is so
Yeah.
funny. You have to watch it. Right. So, you know, there's that. But as a whole, I don't feel good. Even if it's funny, I don't feel good when it's over. Right. I'm kind of like, oh,
Yeah, your
like,
dopamine rush is tanked.
right. Versus if
Yeah.
I'm creating. This is why I
Hmm.
love writing and I love doing the podcast. And I even love personally, I like creating reels. Like I think it's fun to get creative with those.
Sure. Yeah.
I produce so much more online than I consume. People are like, oh, did you see I posted about this? Or like, did you see this? And most of the time I'm like, nope, sorry. Like I know it looks like I'm on online a lot because I'm constantly posting stuff, but I like
Yeah.
to produce. I don't like to
To
consume.
consume. I
Yeah.
know. You know what's really funny about that is like I just want to be really clear that like this is definitely a thing that I too struggle with. Like American Idol is my actual favorite time of the year. Like call it my stinking Super Bowl. All I want to do, it's like actual bowls of popcorn on the couch with my family and no one's allowed to talk. We're not talking. We are watching every minute of American Idol and we pause when we go to the bathroom and it's a whole thing. I'm so obsessed. And we get behind sometimes and then I want to watch it until 11 o'clock at night and I want my kids to see it with me. And the other day we did, and we put my children to bed at 10:30, which is like we're like a 7:30, 8 o'clock bedtime family. So they're like, you know, dying on the couch. I'm like, sit with me, watch this, make my dreams come true. And I was just like, my husband was, I mean, it's like a thing, right? Kids slept in the next day. They went to school late. It was like a problem. And he was like, I don't think that was a great choice. And I was like, don't judge me for my choices.
But it's true. It's like when we start over consuming even the good stuff, even the hilarious reels,
I
even
know.
American Idol,
I
it
know.
doesn't lead us towards a bigger thing. And of course there's a time and a place to break the rules, right? I mean,
For sure.
but what you're saying is very, very true. Okay, I feel like we could talk about balance, productivity, all of that kind of higher level thinking stuff forever. But let's get down to business here.
Sure.
Okay, so let's say someone is super overwhelmed in their life between their career, their house, whatever it is. What is the first system someone should put in place when their life as a whole just feels chaotic?
Well, it's definitely your time. You need to get your time under control. So time management is, and a system for your time management is vital. I teach a 5-block time blocking method. Again, got a workbook for that too. And it's totally free. You can download it. So you can learn my fundamental needs and my time blocking for free. And the workbooks are incredible. And those two things together are the first 2 steps. And those 2 things alone will change your life. Truly, once you get your time under control and then you get your fundamental needs in place, like 95% of your bandwidth will come back. 95% of your to-do list will be erased. Like everything is just going to magically get better. It's not actually magic. It's just a system. So that is a great place to start. Living it with your life fragmented all over the place, you don't realize that there's little pockets of time just floating around. And so what you do is you capture all of that and you get things into really organized groups. Like if you had your forks in your kitchen in 15 different cabinets and cupboards and shelves, it'd be really hard to know where to go to find a fork, right? You'd constantly be looking for a fork, but we don't. We put them all in one spot. So every time we need a fork, we go to the drawer where the forks are. And that's the same thing in our life. Every single time I need to show up and serve and be a mom, I hit that twice a day in my AM block and my PM block. And I repeat that 5 days a week. On the weekend, I'm kind of available. We shake things up a bit and we let loose. We live a little free on the weekends. But and the same thing with my work, right? And the same thing with taking care of myself. So these 5 time blocks are how I've taken everything that has to get done in a day and a week, and you group them so that you are essentially not scattered all over the place. And there's some predictability there. And then it becomes a lot more efficient. So those 2 workbooks are a great place to start.
I am such a massive fan of time blocking. Like, I feel like time blocking saves my life. And I think there's this misconception that if you time block everything out, then you're in that hyper overdrive, over productivity, hustle kind of thing. Like, oh, you're squeezing in 15 minutes here and you're squeezing in there.
No.
And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's missing the point. The idea is that when you are efficient with your time within those blocks, then you do have the time to spend with your family because you've gotten the other stuff done in an efficient way. Or like you do have time to sit and read a book because you've gotten the other stuff done in an efficient way. Like all the time people are like, how do you read so much? And I'm like, well, because I don't waste my time. You know what I mean? Like I have time to rest. It's the opposite of overproductivity. It's the opposite of the hamster wheel. Like time blocking allows you to free up the time you want to be spending on rest or family time or whatever.
And essentially, like, I think you would find it very interesting, and most people do. My time blocking method requires that you only have 5 blocks in a day. So it's far from what most people are teaching on the internet for time blocking, because it leads to this misconception, right, of like over scheduling your day. Because and there's no time blocks in my Google Calendar at all. It's a method that we put pen to paper to. And it's like I mean, we do use a Google Calendar. I have a hybrid time management system because that's important, obviously, for our appointments and such. But our time blocks and the way that I teach it actually blocks in time for all those things that you're talking about. So my time blocking is much more macro than what people would initially think, like you just said, on a micro level. So same thing with habit stacking and this whole concept and obsession with that. I think it's far too micro. I think we're already overwhelmed with very, very long lists of things that have to get done. And I think we need to pull ourselves up out of the weeds and look at our lives on a macro level to get out of overwhelm. There's not as much happening in your life as you think there is. It's just because you're constantly being inundated with bells and whistles and dings and charms and things to do. So my time blocking is literally 5 blocks in a day, and that's it. And it takes the overwhelm out. It's a really, really great foundational place to start organizing your time.
That sounds amazing. I think it's so true. It all feeds into each other, because probably the reason your 5 time blocks work so well is because you've identified the fundamentals. Yeah. And so you're not focused, like you said, on all these little micro things that actually don't matter in your life, that are not the essentials. You're focused on, where am I putting these kind of macro fundamentals in your life? And that just takes a lot of self-reflection and, some intentionality. Yeah. So would you be able to share, because you mentioned that checklists can be a bit of a slog, but you do have a checklist system. Can you share what that is and why that works?
Okay. So once people get moved into the ecosystem and they start running my method, I literally can get rid of 95% of a person's to-do list. Okay. But before that happens, before somebody picks up my method and is like, yeah, I want to subscribe to this method and I want to do this with my life, we're all running off of checklists. If we're not doing that, we're just running off of long to-do lists, right? And so there's a way to get immediate relief with that to-do list, even if you don't subscribe to my ideas and concepts and systems and methods, right? So essentially it's what I like to call a prioritized brain dump list. And so every week with your to-do list that's really long, you should be prioritizing that into 1s, 2s, and 3s. Your 1s are the things that you have to get done this week or there will be consequences. Your 2s are kind of hard to identify, so sometimes I jump straight to 3s. 3s are the things where we're like, they absolutely do not need to get done this week. I probably don't need to get done next week either. And then your 2s essentially are the things that are like, I don't have to do it this week, but it's pretty necessary that I get it done next week. And so then you immediately focus on your 1s this week. Once people do that, they probably are going to get through their 2s. And then their 3s are typically like projects that have been weighing on them that aren't even supposed to be on a to-do list. They're supposed to be on a project list of, like, we set time aside to organize the garage. We set time aside to build the doghouse, like these are the things that people are putting on their to-do list. They're also putting a lot of things on their to-do list that will get taken care of within the fundamental needs. So those would come off. But that is what I think you can do like immediately after listening to this podcast episode, is just going and brain dumping everything that's on your to-do list and prioritizing it into ones, twos, and threes.
It's so simple and it makes perfect sense. I love a good brain dump, because if you don't do that, if you don't brain dump and then prioritize, then you are more likely to just do whatever's easiest or right in front of your face, and then you're not getting those ones done. And so that's where you always feel like you're behind and stressed out and whatever. But like you said, if you just know exactly what you should focus on, and then you don't let yourself get distracted by the twos or threes, then you're going to feel so much better at the end of the day. You're not going to feel like, what did I accomplish? Because the things you accomplished didn't actually move you towards what needed to get done. So I love that approach. One more specific one that I wanted to ask you about is the idea of a communication board. What's a communication board and how do you use it?
This is the number one question that people ask me. A communication board is essentially a hub, a main spot in your house where we are going old school and we're putting communication, things that need to be communicated to our family, on the board. It could be a whiteboard, it could be a chalkboard, it could be a pin board, it could be a calendar, if you will, but it needs to be a little bit more than just a calendar. It's a place for people to understand the systems that you've created. So if one of the things that I tell my students all the time, and I say it on the podcast a lot too, is like, if you don't know the drill, they don't know the drill. So we have to start with you understanding what the systems are. But past that point, it's so important that you start communicating these systems outwardly to your family so that they understand how to get involved and you're not doing all of the work. They can start doing the work. So there's a lot of people that are really big into these skylights right now. They're like essentially a massive phone that's stuck on your wall. It's like a calendar. They can click it. It's got checklists for the kids. That is definitely, in my opinion, a huge distraction from what I think a communication board should be. I think a communication board should not just be a place where you're telling everybody, here's your chores. I don't believe in chores. We don't have chores in our house. We have family contributions, and then we have jobs that our kids are able to do so they can learn how to use their skills to get paid. And that's what I want them to do when they're older, is use their skills to make money. And so these are the kinds of systems that I'm putting on my communication board. What's for dinner so no one's asking me, right? What are the jobs that are available for you to use to do to make money this week? What is the current routine that we're trying to dial in right now? And what are the family to-dos that we're all going to pitch in and help take care of this week? So those are the things that I'm putting on my communication board. Some people like to have like a month grid and a calendar. My whole family's synced up on a digital calendar for the older teenagers and up. For the little kiddos, they kind of have their own little magnetic calendar that we're kind of bringing them into in their bedrooms, that we kind of do as like a morning or nighttime routine thing. So yeah, the communication board is vital, and it's like the hub where everyone goes to get information about how we operate in our home.
We have a version of that, but as you're talking, you're giving so many good ideas for how to elevate our use of it, because then there are like little random things that I'm like, I don't want to forget to tell this to my husband. Yesterday, for example, my son, my 4-year-old, had climbed up onto we have like the fridge where the freezer's on the bottom, not like a side door. Yeah. So he'd use the handle of the freezer to climb up into the fridge, and had managed to push there's like some ground beef in there back like behind the cheese drawer, and I couldn't reach it. And all the other kids were like, I need a snack, I need this. And I was like, I am not taking apart this fridge right now. Like but there's ground beef back there, and I need my husband to know there's ground beef back there. So like on our board, we have like Shannon to do, Aaron to do. We also keep like a running list of things we need to buy at the store or whatever. But I was also able to just like jot down like, hey, there's ground beef behind the cheese drawer in the fridge. Aaron, please get it. Or like sometimes you just need to write it down in the moment.
Absolutely.
So I love a good old fashioned whiteboard for that reason, because it does keep like communication really, really available. So, okay, great. I love that idea. The communication
That's my favorite.
board.
That's exactly what it's supposed to be used for.
Right. Just being a family, man. The things you have to communicate, the things you never thought you'd say.
There's ground beef behind the cheese drawer. That
It's
is,
like,
that's going to be with me for a long time. That one's good. That's real good.
yeah, that's just like a parenthood 101 right there. Okay.
It's
So I would love for you to share, though, how can people approach these kinds of systems who they say they feel boxed in by routines? They're like, oh,
mm,
I'm so type B, or like that kind of thing just like makes me feel overwhelmed having these systems in place. Like, what would you say to them?
let me out. Let me answer the question. This is my favorite question. Open the gates. Let me unleash. Listen, everybody has systems. They're either working for you or they're not. I don't ever want to hear someone say, I'm not systematic. Guess what your system is? Chasing your tail. That's your system. Everyone's doing something on repeat. That's all a system is. You just got to figure out what it is that you actually want to repeat. And when you do that, the amount of freedom you will give yourself is uncomparable. The amount, this is my husband. My husband is so like, why? And I'm like, look, you want these outcomes in your life. You will literally never have them if you keep floating around every day, all day long. Like, it's not going to happen. You don't get muscles by just like walking the block every once in a while. That doesn't happen. You go to the gym, you lift weights, you pay attention to some things, right? Like, am I gaining? Am I losing? How am I fueling my body? And then you get the results that you want. So there are some people that are like, I'm super fine being overwhelmed. I'm super fine feeling like I'm in a sea of chaos. This is just the season of life that I'm in. And that's super fine. Absolutely. There are some people that are just totally okay with that. It's the person that's like, I don't actually like living that way, but I still want to be like a sheet in the wind, that I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. Your systems that you have in place right now are not working for you. Let's just give you some systems that are working for you so you can have the best of both worlds, right? And I think the people that are type B, there is a need in every household to have structure and have order, right? This is going to help your kids with the way that they behave. It's going to help you. It helps people with ADD and ADHD tremendously. These things are wildly important. And most of the time, you hear that coming from people that are craving it the most. I will say that I hate being told what to do, and I hate living a really rigid lifestyle. That's why I created this, so I can be free to do whatever the heck I want. I understand what I need to do, and now I get to go do whatever I want because of it.
There's, I get this with decluttering a lot too. There's this sense of like, I want to have my cake and eat it too. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, that's just not possible. Like, you can't declutter if you're not willing to get rid of your stuff. If you
Yeah.
want to live in a decluttered home, you just have to get rid of some of your stuff. I understand. I can help you through the roadblocks. Like, we can talk through how to make
Yeah.
that happen. But like, fundamentally, you got to get rid of stuff in order to declutter.
Yeah, and when you look at that person's home that seems so peaceful, that's what you're craving. You're craving this light, airy feeling in your home, right? Well, you're craving that for a reason. And so yeah, there's hard decisions that have to be made.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, then this leads into perfectly the last question I have for you that I think so many people struggle with, that piggybacks off of that, which is, once we do get these systems in place, we have our communication board, we start to prioritize using a checklist, these different ideas that you offer, we've identified our fundamentals. How do we stay consistent instead of letting them fall back by the wayside and falling back into our old chaotic way of living?
Yeah, I think the first and most important thing is that you just start with one thing at a time, and you get that down really well, and then you add in another one and another one and another one. But the other thing too is just making sure that you understand how to like operate your systems. So when you go and declutter your house, that's really cool, but if you don't have a system in place to help you maintain the thing that you did, the organization doesn't just stay organized by itself, right? We can organize our time, we can organize our meal planning, we can organize our Google Calendar, but if you don't have a system to continue that, then yeah, it falls to pieces. And so the system is what is important, and it tells you what to do every day, every week, every month. So in order to keep our car well organized, what do we need to do? Every time we get out of the car, the kids have to take the 45 things that they brought into the car, because we don't have tablet kids. They bring a bag full of things, and then the bag is all over the car, and they have to repack it in the bag, which I know everyone's like, why not just use the tablet? Well, I have reasons for that are not for this podcast episode. I'd rather ensure that my children get the things back in the bag and get them in the house, and it goes where the go bag spot goes in the garage, right? And that I take my snacks out of the car and I don't leave the trash in, right? So these are the things, that's the system, right? Is that we ensure that we know where the organization breaks down, and then we put a checkpoint in there that we repeat every day or every week or every month to keep that thing running really smoothly.
Ooh, that phrase right there. Know where the organization breaks down, like pinpoint where things start to go wrong. And like, I love that. And yes, and it's about baking it into your system. Excuse me. But it's like you and your family are used to not just hopping out of the car and running inside as fast as possible. You're used to baking in the extra 3 minutes for the kids to gather their things, and as you were also saying, that point of breakdown, one for me, an example came to mind is after school. So my kids don't get handheld devices either, unless we're on like a road trip. The rule is if it's 2 hours or longer, then you get some iPad time, but at home it's nothing. And so their screen time is, each of them, I have 3 kids, get 30 minutes of their show after school. So it turns out to be like 90 minutes, but usually their siblings aren't really watching their show. So anyways, the idea is the TV's on for 90 minutes, but every time we get home from school, they would argue who gets to choose their show first. And I didn't have a system in place for who got their show first. And I didn't want it to be like, I think it's just Joe hasn't had hers first in a while, or like whoever's complaining the loudest, I finally give in and let them do it. You know what I mean? And so what I did is I had my 7-year-old sit down and write, and he loves assignments, right? And I said, I want you to write out like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then write who goes first, second, third on each of those days. And I want you to do your best to make sure it's very even of like who gets to go first and then second, third, or whatever. And he did a great job. I didn't even do the system. I told my 7-year-old, try and make it as even as possible. And I looked at it and I was like, I think it's about right, And so then that is on our fridge, or like it's right next to our communication board. So the kids get home and they were like, what day is it? I'm like, it's Wednesday. And they go to the board and they see who goes first. And that little piece of paper has saved me so much grief because it's a system.
It is. It's a great system. And I was literally like going to say grief when you said it, because that's what it is. It's amazing. I love that very, very, very much.
All it is a bunch of complaints, but we won't get into that right now.
And the funny thing is that it's the same child that complains the loudest. So it always ends up being the same child that gets it, because the other child is not wired like that. So it's like, we need a system for this so that this stops being a problem.
Which is why I made that specific child write the list himself, because now it's in his handwriting. You don't get to complain the loudest, my friend.
That's hilarious.
I loved this conversation. I do ask 2 questions of all my guests at the end of the episode. And so the first one is, what is something that you are currently paring down?
What is something that I'm currently paring down?
It does not have to be a physical possession. It can be like an idea, a belief, something on your schedule.
No, I think it's my meals. I'm paring down my meals. We now are only doing 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, 2 a.m. snacks, and 2 p.m. snacks. And we eat option A on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we eat option B on Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Oh, I'm such a huge fan of that. That has saved my life. We have 1 snack after school. You get a slice of Dad's homemade sourdough bread, and then you get your choice of fruit. So it's sourdough and fruit every single day. Tell you what, that can save lives.
And you know what? These aren't even my kids' snacks. I should clarify. They get to fend for themselves. These are my snacks.
You're like, confession? Let me be clear. I'm not making myself 7 different bougie snacks every single day. I love that for you. All right. So what is something that you are looking forward to right now?
I'm looking forward to summer. We have some really fun breaks planned. And because of the systems I have in place in my business, I'm able to take some good time off, and just excited to be home with my babies. And we homeschool one of them, but I'm excited just to be up in the mountains and have a really nice, easy, restful summer.
Yes, it's so funny that you say that because I too have done a lot of work up front to ensure I'll have time off this summer because we're moving to Alaska. And
Oh
so
my
because
gosh.
of that, this episode is not going to be out for a long time and summer will be almost over. But my listeners know that a lot of these that they're listening to are recorded way back
Yeah.
when. So this is the end of the summer when you hear this, but that speaks to our systems, right, Chelsi
Yeah.
Jo? Like that
Absolutely.
is a reflection. Okay, well, where can everyone follow along to listen to your podcast, all the good things to find you online?
Yeah, my podcast is called Systemize Your Life, and we'd love to have you come over and listen. We've got over 500 episodes locked and loaded and ready for you to binge your heart out. But everything else can be found over at chelsijo.co. Obviously, we've got some great workbooks that are linked down below, but if you're really excited and just want to know where to get started, we have a really cool quiz that will teach you what system you should start with first at chelsijo.co/quiz. And that will deliver some really juicy details on my favorite systems. So yeah, I hope to meet your listeners.
Why are quizzes so addicting? It started with the teenager magazines, and I can't let them go. Whenever there's a quiz, I'm like, I'm in.
I forgot about that.
Right? I had a quiz once. I want to re-up it. That was what is your decluttering style? Like you're either the environmentalist or the, I don't know, the sentimentalist or whatever. And everybody loved that quiz. But then I just got I didn't want to pay for the quiz website.
Yeah.
But I should probably start it back up because people love that kind of thing. Anyway, I'll have all of that information in the show notes. Thank you again for being here. This was a really, you know what? It was a really productive conversation.
It was a really productive conversation. I'm so glad that you had me on.
You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.